You're listening to the Boomtime Digital Marketing Podcast. For over 50 episodes, Boomtime has been the professional source for marketing information and inspiration. For more articles and episodes, visit us at boomtime.com and be sure to subscribe to the Digital Marketing Podcast on your iPhone or Android device to listen on the go. Now, here's your host, JP Clement.
Hello, everyone. I'm JP Clement. I'm the CEO of Boomtime. We are a digital marketing agency, and we have a core value educating not only our own people in our team, but also our clients. We love to educate. We love to teach people. We believe that's one of the best ways to unlock the potential in our team members and in our clients. So we have this series where we talk about some of the things that we do and try to offer as much information and education as possible. And today we are going to talk about content and content strategy. And to do that, I have Kathy Watts, our director of content, and Nick Martinez, lead strategist on many of our top clients. And they're going to educate me and everybody who's listening to this.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Content, that's a big topic. That's something that at Boomtime we do a lot of. And we have multiple packages at Boomtime that deal with content, but content is definitely one of our main avenues of digital marketing and something that we do because it works incredibly well for the type of clients that we tend to serve. We have a package. We have several packages with some content included in them, but our main one is called Communicate. And in that Communicate package, we do two main things, or three. We do content strategy. We work very closely with our clients to understand what their voice is, what their overall strategy for the business is, and then we devise a content strategy that will enable them to meet their digital marketing goals. And the other two parts of that package, very many parts, but the other two key parts that relate directly to content are our nurture campaigns and our build campaigns. Our nurture campaigns are designed to do just that, to nurture leads, to take people that are just coming on board with our clients, just landing on their email list, for instance, or in their LinkedIn connections. And then so what we do is we create this series of content pieces that could be podcasts, videos, blog articles, white papers, infographics, a bunch of different things. We tend to do a lot of blog articles because that's what most of our clients feel comfortable with. But so we take these, we write a series of articles that will be sent to people that are just new to this relationship with our clients. So these prospects get a series of emails over the course of anywhere between a month to 3 months, depending on the type of client that we are working with. And we write content that will make those prospects more comfortable, more familiar with our clients and what they do and why they do what they do. And then so it's kind of a drip campaign where we drip those emails over the course of, as I said, between 1 month and 3 months, depending on the complexity of what our clients is trying to say or what they do. And it's anywhere between 3 emails to 6 or 7 emails, again, depending on the complexity. Once these people have been going through that series, and all of this is automated, not the content writing, obviously, and Kathy will talk some more about that, but we take these people, these prospects through that series, that nurture series, and they get educated about the company, our client. And then after that, we push them into kind of a maintenance type of campaign called Build. And Build is where we try to keep these people top of mind because they might not be ready to actually purchase our clients' services or products. And so we put them in this build campaign so our clients stay top of mind with their prospects. And typically a build campaign is about a couple pieces of content per month, every 2 weeks. So that's what we do. Now we're going to take actually a specific example of what we do. And for that, I'm going to have Kathy talk a little bit about, content strategy, and also a specific campaign we did for a company called the Wallace Construction Group.
Yeah, well, thanks, JP. You've pretty much covered a lot of the different things that we do, but content for us typically is like email campaigns with our nurture and build, but we also do a lot of other types of content. We do communication, connection, and content campaigns over on our LinkedIn for clients so that they can, make connections and continue to communicate with them on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. We also do a lot of podcast and video and infographics for our clients as well, and make sure that we're always kind of touching them. I think landing pages probably, and website content is also another important piece where we work with our clients to put together the right content based on the strategy that somebody like Nick might put together. And so, Nick, do you want to introduce Wallace, and then we'll talk a little bit about their nurture campaign?
Sure. Yeah. Wallace Construction Group is a construction group out of Southern Florida. And what's really awesome is when they started working with us about 3 months ago, they had just completed some work with a brand agency. So they had a complete branding of the company. They were rebranding from a previous iteration. They were called Wallace and Associates. And so they have, a probably 20-year history that needed to be reintroduced to people and to prospects under this new branding guideline. And so really my favorite part of what really drives the content strategy is understanding the client goals and what their needs are, and then also having the discovery intake. So it's an actual interview with them to talk about, the differentiation points of the company, what they do well that sets them apart from others, understanding which types of personas they want to speak to, who are their key clients, who would they love to get in a room and speak to, and then understanding the origin story for where the company started and where they want to go. And so Kathy, in this case, learning about Wallace Construction Group, for me as a strategist, it's a very, very fast track way to become an expert in where they are and where they've been. And then I help to guide them to where they want to go with content strategy. So JP, my favorite part about starting early with a client is that immediately after the discovery intake, I can meet with Kathy and we go over highlight points that I would like to discuss within the framework for the nurturing campaign. And then Kathy has some really fantastic best practices and just some really fantastic ways to kind of poke holes in my strategy or my ideas, and says, have you considered this? I think this would work. Maybe we back off this idea, and that's a longer build campaign down the road in 6 months. And so it's a really neat way to build a runway for short and long-term content deliverables, and then understand, exactly what we want to say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Nick. But so, Kathy, why do strategy? A lot of clients ask us, for marketing in general, but also for content, why do we need to do strategy, right? I mean, it's just going to write a couple of blog articles, maybe produce a video. So what's the importance of strategy here?
I mean, that's a really great question. Strategies should be driving everything that we're doing, especially in content. We need to know what the client's goals are, where they would like to be, who they would like to be speaking to, how they want to talk to them, how they want to sound, the types of information they want to share. That's all part of strategy, right? We need to build, we need to learn about this client. We need to create personas. We need to come up with keyword research and talk to them about their business and be curious and learn as much as we can. This is not a one-stop solution, out of the box, right? We do all of these things so that it can be highly customized for a specific client and their customers. So yeah, I think strategies is the key cog in this machine where we get to know all of these things so that we can create the right type of content. And content's not an automated process either. And so it needs to have a strategy to kind of like put us onto the right path so that we can, deliver to our clients and their customers the information that they want in the way that they want to deliver it.
Great. That's definitely music to my ears, that we think that way and we try to educate our clients. Cool. But I have two follow-up questions here, Kathy. One is that do you, in your experience, and Nick, you can answer that one as well, how much do we have to drive that strategy? I mean, how much do our clients know, or do they know what they don't know, and how much do we have to extract out of them versus them being kind of ready to give us what we need to develop the strategy?
Yeah, I think that our clients definitely don't know what they don't know, right? They are the experts on themselves, on their business, and also on their customers. And when we first, when Nick first started speaking to them, like, we are not the experts on like them specifically and their customers and who they are. And so like, that's a very important part of the process where we spend a lot of time talking with them early on, like as part of the intake and discovery, but also in like ongoing conversations as we get to know these clients and are good at like interviewing them and kind of drawing that information out that they have, but maybe they've never really thought about it in that way.
And I think, Kathy, what's super helpful too is as we become experts on what our clients do, we can utilize some advanced analytics capabilities like SEO research. So we can see like what the industry is interested in learning about, what they click on when they Google search, understand like who their main competitors are and what types of content they have on their website, and then the opportunity gaps that maybe our client has, because some clients have a ton of content on their website and some have nothing at all. And so just understanding where our starting point is with a client is super helpful at that stage as well.
Yes, Nick, I'm glad you brought that up because, obviously, as Kathy mentioned, content is not something that you can automate. I mean, you can automate the distribution of the content, by the creation of it, there is no way it can be automated. That's why until AI, marketing AI gets really, really smart, we'll have still people like Kathy and her team write content for our clients. We develop video content and podcasts for our clients. But that said, though, you brought a very interesting point, which is that although content is not automatable, it's also not just purely a creative endeavor. There's a lot of research in what we do, and that should be done, as you mentioned, SEO research and looking at the analytics of what has been going on, maybe with some existing content and things like that are very critical. So yeah, thanks for bringing up that point. I think it's important for people to understand that as well. And Kathy, my other question for you was, you mentioned the word persona, and I know what a persona is, but some of our listeners might not. Can you explain very quickly what a persona is?
Sure. A persona is it's like a profile of like your potential like ideal customer. So what we do is we put together kind of like a customer profile of them, almost like a dating profile. Like, what does this person do? Do they have a name? What's their age? Like, what sort of business or demographic are they in that way? Like, what are they interested in? And those are the people that we like speak to through the content.
Great. Thanks for that little explanation.
Sure.
I would say, JP, what's super helpful in terms of creating a primary persona is to also have a secondary and then sometimes a tertiary persona, so that we can speak to different types of potential prospects. And in some cases we will, I know Kathy and I have had discussions about like messaging for LinkedIn. So when we're creating posts that go to the campaign point person's LinkedIn profile, we're speaking in broad terms sometimes about, and I call these buckets, but we will have evergreen messages that talk about, anything that's tried and true on behalf of the company. And then we'll also speak to very specific niches within that. And so we can speak to different types of personas. And I think once we truly hone in on the voice of the client, that's when I think Kathy's content creation and deliverables really start to shine, because we start saying things that they always hoped they could have said or that they should have said by now. And that's where we get a lot of really positive feedback, and they like seeing it, posted in a public way, and it's just exciting to see it that way.
Great. So do we want to talk about a little bit about how our content strategy informs creation, Kathy?
Sure, absolutely. That's a really great question. I think that there's so many different things about content strategy that inform content creation. Like the first would be like the client profile, like who is the client? What do they sound like? What do they like to talk about? A lot of that information comes from listening to the actual intake and during the discovery meeting, where we listen to the client actually talk about themselves and their business. Some of that also comes from conversations that Nick or another strategist might have with the client, and they provide information as part of the content strategy and the content plan to content. Personas also drive how we're going to talk in those things. Like obviously, we're trying to capture the voice of the client, which is how they sound in general, but then the tone might be different depending on the persona we're speaking to. It might be a more formal tone or a more informal tone, or it could be things at a very high level versus a very detailed level, depending on the type of product or service they're selling. And of course, we also look at keywords, like what are the keywords that this client is targeting as part of their content strategy when they're working with Nick, for instance. And also, who's their audience? Like, what are their clients like? That's part of the persona, but it's also another important piece. Like, are we speaking to people who are college educated with a higher level of ability to digest this content, or are we speaking to clients whose target audience is maybe somebody who only graduated from high school? And so how we choose to create the content is driven by all of these different things, as well as the types of resources that they have, any other keyword research that's been done about what sorts of topics are of most interest in that vertical. So it's kind of this huge soup of all of these different things that we put in to create this specific recipe for this specific client and these pieces of content.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts to this. And so, I mean, do you have any tips or, techniques that you use to, because you have to sort through, as you just said, a mass of different, factors and points of data points and things like that. How do you, to get down to something that's way more narrow than that and very focused? So how do you go through that?
I think definitely thinking about the type of content you want to create, whether it's are we creating an email or are we creating a quick thing? So how long does it need to be, and how's it going to be delivered? Is it going to be on the website? Is it going to be an email? Is it going to be on LinkedIn? Nobody wants to read a 300-word post on LinkedIn. Yes. That's not going to happen. So that's one thing to think about. Definitely nailing down your voice, how you want to sound is very important, and the tone that you want to speak in. So if you know those things, that makes things a little bit easier. And also personas and audience. So if you know who your client is that you want to speak to, that helps as well. And then of course, the keyword research obviously is always very important, and the types of resources that you choose to provide. When I receive a content plan from Nick or another strategist, it typically is here's the title, here's the audience, here's the tone, here's some key points that we want to talk about in general, and here's the keywords that we want to incorporate. And here are some resources to provide you some additional background information. And resources could be anything from an audio interview that they recorded with the client talking about things. It could be other resources that they provide off their website or other resources from out and about. But so yeah, definitely I think if you can hone in on how do I want to sound and what do I want to say specifically, I think those are the things that really drive content creation and kind of make it a little easier.
Yeah. So it sounds also that Nick and his team really start to kind of hone in into what you need to know and kind of make sense of all the things that they've heard or read or analyzed, right? And then so that makes your job probably a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Once they've nailed down that strategy for the content, creating the plan and then passing it off to me, I get the slightly easier part of the job, and that they've figured all of these things out already, and I can ask questions to clarify it, or so that my team can create what they are thinking they would like. But in general, Nick and the strategist does a lot of the work.
Great. And Nick, so do you see a lot of pushback from clients in terms of when you present them the plan, right? This is a content plan. This is the things we're going to talk about. This is how we're going to talk about it. This is the type of distribution methods that we're going to be using. This is the type of content we're going to be creating. How much pushback do you typically see?
Yeah, great question. So to set up a foundation for collaborating with the client, I will present a pretty specific outline for channels and how we distribute it. But then the client helps me to fine tune and refine it. So it immediately becomes collaborative. And so in the case of like a nurture campaign, I'll create an outline that I get approval from before I fully build onto it and turn it into Kathy for our content team to write. And so the client knows what they're getting, and then when they get the final version, there's still another step to review it and in some ways refine from there. So like in the case of Wallace Construction Group, they signed off on the outline, they loved the key points, they understood why we were going to speak about certain topics in a specific order, and even understanding like the cadence of when we would deliver the emails. And then when they got the final content version and saw it in an actual email delivered to their inbox, they said, "We love it, it's just too long." And they said, if we think about it, because they actually emailed it to their team, and so they're like, "We sent it to a construction superintendent and he said it was too long to read on his phone quickly, so can we make it 500 words instead of 800 words or something like that?" And so I gave that feedback to Kathy, and so she refined it to a smaller word count, but then everything that we weren't able to elaborate on within that nurture campaign was used for a further point, like in a content campaign for LinkedIn, or was incorporated into a social media graphic that we posted. So it all got utilized and very efficiently. But yeah, absolutely, the pushback does occur, but I think that's a really healthy part of collaborating with the client.
Great.
Yeah,
but it sounds like
I agree.
Pretty minimal though.
Yes.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too, because I feel like that first time that they see like completed content is a really important part of the process as well, right? Because up until this point, we've just been talking about something that doesn't really exist and they haven't been able to see it. And so they think that these are the things that they want to see and this is the way they want to see it talked about. But until they actually see those emails or whatever it is, content on the website or a script for a video or something like that, they don't know whether they love it or not, and they don't know what they want to change. So like being able to actually see that copy and figure out like, here's what I like about it, here's what I don't like about it, is a really important part of the process for me and my team, but also I think for Nick and the rest of the strategists in determining how this strategy is going to roll out. And so like I always feel like I always want to hear feedback and make some refinements to those initial pieces of copy, whether it's an email or something else, just because that's how we really nail down their voice and tone and messaging.
Right. And I will say, Kathy, what's really awesome is that when we deliver, like you send me the final version of the content for a campaign and it's in a Google Doc, so it's a very flat two-dimensional piece. And I like to think of it as looking at blueprints versus a finished construction piece, a house coming up. And so for me, JP, when I present it to a client, I like to present it with a narrative for them to see it in a final version, because it's so much easier to envision the final version and how people, end users would get it versus looking on a Google Doc. And so, so to Kathy's credit, she's been in tons of client-facing interviews with me where we dig in on special projects or we refine content, and it takes that collaboration to the next level, truly.
Yeah, no, but that's great stuff. And it's interesting that Wallace actually did that, gave you that great feedback. Look, it's too long, which is, not something that we necessarily think about, right? We knew we had points to make, right? And we made the points, and it was a bit too long, which is really interesting and great feedback. I mean, I'm glad you had that level of collaboration with the clients, so that kind of stuff gets done. And which makes me even happier. And a great lesson is that no good content should be wasted, right? So all the stuff that didn't make the final cut for those emails, I'm super excited to hear that it was repurposed for other things. So can you talk a little bit more about that process? Like how do you define what goes where, and what kind of content, what avenues you have to deliver content, and how you repurpose content maybe for some specific channels?
Sure, that's a great question, JP. So we talk about like all of these different parts of content, whether it's like an email campaign, something on the website, something on LinkedIn. But we always want to make sure that wherever that content originates, that we're also repurposing it as it makes sense in other places, in other touch points, because we're trying to kind of build a relationship that always eventually drives you back to the website. We're always trying to drive you back to the website with our content in some fashion, so that we can capture you as a lead, your leads or whatever, so that we can follow up with you and have you like in our email list. And so, what we do with the nurture campaigns and the build campaigns is we typically, once those are approved and they start to like be either emailed out or posted to the website, we'll take snippets of those content from those and repurpose them for LinkedIn campaigns. We might create connection messaging around pieces from those as well. And so now we've taken it from like it's just in your email to it's in your email and now it's on your website to it's in your email, it's on your website, and now it's talking to you on LinkedIn as well. And it's not always necessarily exactly verbatim in every place, but it's very close messaging. Once we've nailed that down, we want to use it as often as possible in as many places as we can. We want to maximize the investment of time and money that we put into creating all of this content. It also creates a cohesive message across any touch point that you have as well, when you've got the same messaging across your website, email, and social media like LinkedIn. And it also starts to drive other things as well. It might start to like feed more into your branding or pull more from your branding. We might start to pull additional things from your website copy that we can use to either create build campaigns going forward by expanding upon that, or posting it out to LinkedIn. So yeah, anytime that we can repurpose some content somewhere else and use it to drive new ideas, that's absolutely what we want to do. If things are working, we want to keep going in that direction. And if things aren't working, we want to figure out where we can pivot to utilize content in the most effective way possible.
And JP, I think to even add on to what Kathy said, during the discovery intake interview with the client, I always frame it with them that I'm going to ask very basic questions, and I'm a layman, and I'm going to ask for them to really deep dive and like truly get into the nitty gritty details. And so as I'm talking to them, sometimes they'll say something that is common, like a commonplace term for them. So for instance, Wallace Construction Group and Thomas in particular said that when discussing the partners of the firm, they always talk about doing the right thing. And he talked about their cost estimation skills and how it's old school. And so I asked him, what does old school mean to you guys? And then he gave just an amazing answer about what old school meant. And that was as I'm listening to it, I make a timestamp for when he said it in the interview, and I visit with Kathy and I say, this is exactly what can go in a hero image on a website, or this can go as a pull quote for, and then we kind of reuse it in various ways. So I feel like from listening to Kathy and Aaron and Meredith interview clients over the years, it's really a fun point to like pinpoint an exact value proposition or differentiation point that sets them apart, and then using that for outward facing content.
That's great. Really interesting tidbits here. So Kathy, can you just run down kind of the some of the more, maybe a little bit more specific about some of the avenues that we use and for content typically, and why they make sense for different clients? Or how we feed the strategy properly?
Yeah, so let's start off with website content, because possibly that might be the first touch point that, or LinkedIn is possibly the first touch point that a prospect ever has with your business. And so like on the website, you want to educate and inform. So we're trying to create content that like shares who you are, who your company is, but also like answers the questions and walks a visitor through sort of like a journey of like wherever they are, let's talk to them at that point. And so like all of the copy that we would create for a website is designed with that in mind. How can we like meet this visitor where they are at this point in time, and this specific place on our website regardless of what page it is, like specific places, how can we meet them at that specific point and give them the information and the push that they need to move forward and pull them further into the funnel, with the goal of eventually capturing their email address so that we can continue to nurture them and talk to them. LinkedIn would be something similar. How can we target the right people and connect with the people that we want to be talking to on LinkedIn? LinkedIn is huge. There's so many different people you could talk to. We want to make sure that we target and connect you with the people that you really want to speak with, who are potential prospects. And then how do we talk to them? How do we set you up as a thought leader so that they continue to want to have conversations with you and eventually go to the website to learn more about things and perhaps sign up for email? Once again, we're capturing leads and pulling you further into the funnel. Once we've got you captured and we've got you on our email list, the nurture campaign is the first thing that you're going to see. It's the first communication that you're going to receive from us. And that campaign is designed to build trust and reduce risk as we're walking you through this kind of decision landscape and pulling you further into the funnel. So the first thing in that would be who are these people? What is this business? So the introductory email answers those questions. It talks a little bit about the business. It introduces the face of the company. The majority of our clients are smaller to mid-sized business owners, and they actually do have a face. We don't typically work with giant corporations. And so that's a good differentiator, right? People want to work with people. They don't want to work with just a company. So they want to know a little bit more about who you are and how did you get here and what do you do? The transparency email would be the second email that they receive in that. And that kind of answers the concern of what's going to happen if I become your customer. What's it going to be like? You are telling me these things on your website, but what's it really going to be like? And so that's, answering those questions, building a little more trust, reducing risk again. And then all of the follow-up emails in the nurture campaign do the same sort of thing. They're providing more information about maybe the differentiators for that company. They're perhaps answering frequently asked questions before you have a chance to ask them. All of that is designed to reduce the risk along the way and pull you further into the funnel. And with the hope that at some point within any of these emails, you're going to reach out to talk to them and maybe become a marketing qualified lead that's ready to talk to a salesperson. Once they've finished the nurturing series, the build campaign is designed to kind of keep you top of mind. Typically in a digital marketing space, you probably need about 16 touches before somebody's ready to sign on the dotted line. And so the build campaign just keeps you top of mind. It's providing useful information that's maybe helping reduce further risk, and also building trust and setting you up as a thought leader who really knows what they're talking about and can help you solve your problems. So it's all kind of feeds into each other.
Yeah, it's kind of a holistic process where every piece of content kind of builds upon something else or different channels.
Yeah,
it's great. And I liked, Kathy, by the way, how you talked about how some of these content can influence the prospects or leads at various points of the funnel, which is really interesting. So maybe we should have another podcast about the funnel, the marketing funnel, and what works and what doesn't work in digital marketing for those various steps. And as you remember, we did a whole series of 8 of them, but maybe we can have a quick one that kind of looks at all of that. So that's great. Thanks a lot, Kathy, for explaining all of that in quite a little bit more detail and the why behind those things. Nick, can you walk us quickly through how actually we applied what Kathy just talked about to a specific client, Wallace in this case?
Perfect question, JP, and really awesome segue to talk about a client. And what I was trying to say is many of our clients fall into 2 categories for me. They either have a marketing director in place that we're working alongside to augment their capabilities, and so collaborating with those marketing directors is an integral part of how we outline the strategy, but then also fine tune it and get buy-in internally from their team. And the second group of clients I have don't have a marketing team or person internally, so we are the de facto marketing director for these campaigns. And so in many cases, the clients come to us and say, we've never done a drip campaign. We've never really looked at the website and seen, why it works or doesn't work. And so before we even implement any strategic deliverables, we also benchmark where they currently are so that we can understand, pre-boom time and post-boom time, what that relationship looks like. And so in the case of Wallace, they were going through a brand new rebrand. It was a brand new website launch. And so that was really exciting for them. They loved it. They were really proud of it. And so we came in with very specific goals with them on, we want to have, so I'm speaking on the behalf of the client. So Wallace Construction Group said, we want to have an email drip campaign to all of these clients. We have an existing contact list, but we also have to grow it. So we help them grow it by utilizing mailbox mining and mining all of their inboxes, which is pretty integral to continued growth. And from there, we outline the strategy and what the customer journey or the prospect journey is going to look like. And so a really interesting thing that I like to do also is to create an action plan for post-launch. So there's pre-launch activity when we're working on stuff, and we take a snapshot of the benchmark data, and then we look at data afterwards. So like in the case of Wallace, we're looking at the Wallace Construction Group open rate, click rate, and then based on what that data looks like, it can inform an action plan for further deliverables down the road. So for instance, and I've done this with Kathy a ton of times, we'll look at the Google Analytics traffic data and user flow behavior on a website, and we'll see that we'll say like, hey, Wallace Construction Group, 40% of all website users end up on your team and about page. They're trying to learn who you are and you don't have enough information. And so I'll talk to Kathy and I'll say, hey, this is what I noticed. What are best practices that you know? And Kathy has come back and said, here are 5 or 6 questions you should ask them to help fill out so we have a better understanding. And so sometimes we ask them if they have a mission and core values, and if there's a previous iteration of the company and what they were known as and when they were founded, who founded it, because all of those key points are things that people remember along the way that they enter into a Google search. And so that's a really easy way to capitalize on low-hanging fruit and to immediately bolster a website and then provide content for them to further share. And so it's really interesting once we have the initial snapshot, like framework for strategy, and then ways to improve it going forward. And so that collaboration and expertise is certainly something our clients enjoy from us.
Great. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you look actually at the data. So it's not just content is not just about strategy and creation. It's also about monitoring and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, right? So can you talk a little bit more about that, Nick? It's like as everybody on the Boomtime team has heard many times from me, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So what kind of measures do you look at? You mentioned a couple, but can you go a little bit more detailed about that? Because I think it's so critical that you have to close that loop, right? And you have to look at monitor the analytics, look at what's working, what's not working, so you can adjust and keep those numbers growing and get better numbers. And also maybe if you have a second, talk about actually specific results for Wallace and how you benchmark those results.
Yeah, absolutely. So initially when we're setting expectations with the client, we'll say in some cases, if I've worked with a client similar or in a similar vertical, we'll say here is what similar performance metrics look like within your industry. So, and this is just off the top of my head, maybe in the construction industry, you have a 15% open rate on emails and an 8% click-through rate on emails. And so we'll say those are the basics that we're going to try and outperform. Now, here is the idea for click-through rates. We want to establish multiple entry points in an email for people to call you, for people to visit a website, or for people to email you and directly talk to someone on the team. So we'll outline those, like say 3 or 4 modes for conversion metrics and opportunities. And so once we outline what we're doing, what we also utilize are heat maps of the email to see where people are clicking, what they're doing with it, who they're sharing it with. In many cases, some of my clients, especially with internal sales teams, they want to know who their emails are being shared with and if they're being shared like more than 10 times. Because if that's the case, they want an exported list of those users so that they can reach out directly and say like, hey, it seems like you're really interested in our last email on, XYZ. And so with Wallace Construction Group, we outlined the basic goals, and Ben and Thomas are the two stakeholders that I work with on these projects at Wallace. And so their nurturing campaign had 4 emails that went out. The last one just went out this week. All 4 have averaged over a 20% open rate, but all 4 are averaging over a 40% click rate. And so they've seen immediate jumps in website traffic. We created a landing page that is optimized for conversions, and we've seen a ton of traffic to their landing page as well. We have call tracking numbers on there so we can see who's calling, where those calls are coming from, how long they are, and we can also share some of those links with prospects that they're having conversations with on LinkedIn. So it becomes a very holistic marketing environment and an ecosystem to funnel people through and make sure they're learning about the Wallace Construction Group.
Yeah, those are outstanding numbers, Nick. In my experience, I've done email marketing for a long time, and those numbers are excellent, especially the click-through rates. The opens are very much driven by your subject line and things like that, and there's not much that you can do there, and that's why those numbers across industries are pretty steady. But a 40% click-through rate is outstanding. That means that it's a proof that the content that we're generating and the calls to action that we have in that content are actually working for their audience. So this is what I think it's almost like an engagement rate, right? So that click-through rate is what we need to look at, even more importantly than the open rate. And what kind of should be driving kind of content changes or improvements. In this case, I don't know if we can do much better than that, but yeah, that's a great sign that what we're saying and how we're saying it is resonating with their prospects.
Absolutely. I also think as part of the secret sauce for successful deliverables and collaboration with a client, the Wallace Construction Group team was correct in their feedback that the content was too long and why. And so for us to roll with that feedback and deliver on it, and then everyone's happy and they see some really outstanding performance marks, it makes them even more willing to try new projects and know that the next version of whatever we're delivering is going to hit the mark and also perform well. So it's this nice snowball action where we get some momentum behind it, and all of a sudden everything that we start trying with them, they believe in a little bit more.
Great. Well, we've talked about a lot of different things, but I think we should leave the final word to Kathy. She's our content expert, after all, and has a lot more experience with content than you or I, Nick. And so, Kathy, what are the your top what's the secret sauce for content? We'll leave our audience with those thoughts.
I mean,
best
I think
practices, whatever, secret sauce.
I think, first and foremost, don't be afraid to tell your story. We all love to hear stories and have it be a little bit more personalized to a specific business or something. We all want to know who we are going to work with if we're going to purchase. So don't be afraid to tell your story. Make sure you really have nailed down who your prospects and your potential customers are and what they want to hear. And also make sure you're doing some research. Obviously, I also am a fan of following the data. Copy and content should never be static. It should always be evolving. It should be agile. When we need to make changes, don't be afraid to make changes based on the data. And definitely listen to the data when you're trying to figure out where you want to move forward as well.
Wow, Kathy, those are you've hit on all the things that I actually. It's not just for content, right? It's just do your homework. In your case, know what your audience is and what they want to hear and what how you need to talk to them. follow the data, critical. That's one of my pet peeves. And then and tell a story, right? And I think Nick and I have talked about that many times. I think in our last podcast we've already talked about that as well, because it's one of my pet peeves. It's with everything you got to tell a story. With your content, with your website. Not just the content in the website, but how your website is shaped and how you take people through journeys, which are stories in and of themselves. How you tell stories with your analytics, and how we report our analytics to our clients is we need to tell stories. And so I think your tips are excellent. Thank you so much for doing that.
Of course, yeah.
Well, I think that concludes it, unless Nick, you have something else to add.
I think Kathy said it a little bit better than I could have.
Or better could too, obviously. So anyway, thanks a lot for all your great insight, Kathy and Nick, and we will probably see one another soon on another podcast.
Okay, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Boomtime Digital Marketing Podcast. For more episodes and to learn more about us, check us out at boomtime.com.